Hey everybody, it's Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast, and I live in the Black Hills of South Dakota, where we got all kinds of tourist stuff going on. Families in particular, they come here in the summer, and they go to caves and mines and alpine slides and Mount Rushmore. It's beautiful. It's super fun, but there's a lot to do, and so you got to compete for that family entertainment vacation buck, and to make that happen, we got billboards everywhere. And most of the billboards, I think, are average to really pretty poor. Like, I just don't see how you'd see that billboard and want to go spend your money on that thing. But there's one billboard that stands out to me as being the best billboard I've ever seen, maybe anywhere, certainly in the Black Hills. And it's got a picture of like a red barn, and then there's a cartoon goat sticking out of it. And then it just says, "Pet a goat." That's the whole thing. And then down on the bottom, for the grown-ups, it says where you can go pet the goat. And, it's just perfectly positioned with simple, short, readable words. The kids are going to be able to read that, and they're going to start chanting it. And then by the time you pass the 3 or 4 miles it takes to get there, mom and dad will probably pull off. I was looking in there the other day to see what all the fuss was about. And sure enough, they got the goats right in there, and they got sheep right in there, some other animals. And they're all just kind of wandering around together. And you can just go in there, I guess, for money, and you can just pet them. But at the end of the day, you can't have your sheep and your goats in the same place. They got to sort that out. And so there's a guy who's got to put the sheep on the one side and the goats on the other side. Likewise, in the Bible, there's a part where they put the sheep on the one side and the goats on the other. It's not a likewise at all. It's the exact same thing. And I had like this whole way that I was going to deliver it, and I thought it was going to be funny, but it broke me, and I have somewhere to be. So that's what we're going with. You've heard the saying, the sheep and the goats. Matthew chapter 25 is where we are introduced to that language. And obviously there are connotations here that transcend the Bible that everybody's heard of. Like the sheep, that indicates you got it right. That's what you want to be. The goats, that's the thing that is destined toward judgment or being on the wrong side of things as it all plays out. And so here in Matthew chapter 25, Jesus is circling all the way back around to what he's been talking about now for 2 full chapters, which is how is everything going to go down with the unfolding of history? Is there going to be a reckoning? What happens? How are kingdom citizens, followers of Jesus, going to know when he's coming back, when the Son of Man is going to return, that is? And what does it look like? What are you supposed to do in the meantime? And then there's this one outstanding question still, which is what's going to happen when the Son of Man does come back? Now, you're supposed to be ready and alert and allocating your resources properly so that if it's real quick, you were ready. If it takes a real long time, you were ready. But what happens when the thing actually happens? Well, the answer is there's some kind of reckoning. There's some kind of sorting out. And the passage goes like this. Matthew 25:31. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, he'll sit on his throne in heavenly glory. And then all the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people one from another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. Like the story at the beginning that I told you. He will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. Jesus seems super likable in most of the New Testament, but in this current day and age, the ethos, the spirit of the age in which we live, the parts where he talks about doing one of the kingly duties that any king has to do, which is judging and adjudicating things, it makes us feel a little bit uncomfortable and weird. Maybe that's because that aspect of Jesus has been overly minimized by some in recent years to make him seem more likable and more saleable to people who are on the outside looking in. I don't know. I don't really have that luxury. We just got to talk about whatever's up next, because we're not trying to sell anything. It's just, it's whatever's next in the Bible. We just look at that thing and try to figure out what it is, and then you just do whatever. It's just, that's the internet, so you can do whatever you want to do. But here's what we learn from the passage. All right, when the Son of Man comes in his glory, okay, that is picking up where Jesus left off toward the end of Matthew 24. So what do we learn back there? Oh, yeah. The signs of the Son of Man, they're going to be huge. The sun will be darkened. The moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from the sky. Heavenly bodies will be shaken. At that time, the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky, and all the nations of earth will mourn. They'll see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of the sky with power and great glory, and he'll send his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they'll gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heavens to the other. Okay, so all of the description in Matthew 24 squares up pretty nicely with the description I just read you in Matthew 25. The Son of Man comes in glory. Okay, well, it sounds like glory. Sounds like terrifying glory, the way he's describing it, but glory nonetheless. And in 24, what I just read you, there's the business business about the angels showing up and them going around and gathering up. It uses the language, the elect, but this would be the citizens of the kingdom, the people who are in this new family of faith that Jesus has been building from the beginning here. And all the angels are with him. And so, let me see, then he will sit on his throne in heavenly glory. Well, that is new information because I don't think that came up in 24. No, it didn't. So now Jesus has given us additional stuff that we need to know. And as he is sitting on his throne in heavenly glory, all the nations are gathered before him. Now, this starts to sound super apocalyptic and otherworldly, obviously. I know there's a thing that our brains do when we get into this kind of literature in the Bible or with any religion, and that is kind of gloss over and be like, okay, yep, heavenly throne, judgment, and there's like angels and stuff. And I just don't even have a category for that. I can't picture it. That's not a maybe reassuring take for you, because people who talk about the Bible, they're supposed to know how all these things work. But I don't have a lot of categories for apocalyptic literature. I can't picture it. I've never had an apocalypse before. And so I know that these passages are holding out there being an end game. I think I can at least grasp what some of the implications of the scene that we're reading about here would be. And for me, the first place my brain goes is to the end of the debate. Think about this. I just read it so casually. Okay, he comes in glory and the earth shaking, stars and all of that stuff. The angels are with him. And then he sits on his throne in heavenly glory. Da, 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 da. Wait a minute. And people can see him? Like he's just sitting there? But instead of that being like a kind of thing that would only happen in a cartoon, like just everybody is like, whoa, hey, check that out. It turns out there was a God. Oh, look at that. Well, there's his outfit, and he's got like a throne room and a throne there, and looks like everybody's lining up. And well, how about that? I guess I was wrong about some stuff. Maybe it won't sound exactly like that, but surely this physical revelation of this greater reality that heretofore has been unseen is going to have some implications. Like that's going to send some shockwaves through people's assumptions. And given what we know about the glory of the Lord when that concept is dealt with elsewhere in the Bible, it won't be the kind of thing where there's a lot of arguing and people are like, well, but are you really God? Like, I don't know. It's a pretty good outfit, but I could imagine a better one. And I think the true God would be the one who has an outfit that none better than could possibly be conceived of. No, like when Moses even sort of was in the company of God for a little bit, the Old Testament has him having to wear a veil because the leftovers of the glory of God that were still reflecting off of his face like knock people out and stuff. The glory of God is this unquenchable, ultimate, untouchable thing according to the Bible and reason, I would say. And so now all of a sudden, this is on display and people see it. And I got to think all the arguments and all the fights and all the political machinations and all the agendas and all the things people are trying to cook up, I think that all just melts. I think it's gone and over with the presence of this inarguable authority. That is the scene that is being described here. And so if we picture this scene, like somebody with a really fancy brass band marches into town, like the Music Man or like the guy who was selling monorails in The Simpsons, and he rolls into town, he's like, I'm fancier than all of you people, and you're going to get in line. Well, I don't know, maybe some people will, but that's still just an exaggerated version of a person putting on a shtick. And while people might have stars in their eyes for a minute or be dazzled by that kind of snake oil salesman or swindler for a second, it's not going to hold up long term because, well, I mean, you're actually peers with that slick person that dazzles you for a moment. No, what we're talking about here is the end of the debate. What we're talking about here is something so other, so different, so baffling and impossible to conceive, but also unmissable that it just makes perfect sense for this to pivot and segue directly into that ultimate source of authority being like, here's exactly how things are. And here's exactly what we're doing. And this has already been sorted through. This isn't like we're going to hear cases or arguments. It's going to play out like this. And then there's this reckoning. And I don't want to talk flippantly about this sheep and goats reckoning thing. It's a pretty gigantic deal. It's way above my pay grade, and it's way above my competency level, and it's way above anybody's competency level. In fact, no one short of the all-knowing, unlimited, timeless, immutable being is in any way qualified to even flirt with making the kind of judgments that are on display in this particular passage, because what we're talking about here is kind of ultimate judgment. And it's interesting because it's not just the ultimate judgment of each individual, but somehow nations are still in place at this point when the Son of Man comes in his glory. Because it does say all the nations will be gathered before him, but then it says, and he will separate the people one from another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. So I think at that point we're pivoting from some kind of national judgment of what cultures, civilizations? Like, I don't know. What's the judgment for? Has any culture ever been like super devoted to God and demonstrated the values of the kingdom? I kind of don't think so. So I don't know if there's like a ranking system, or I don't understand what the judgment of the nations part is, other than it being in there provides this really important sense for anybody who cares about justice that there will be justice at some point, that stuff that needs to be answered for will be answered for. In that sense, there is a positive side of the coin. Culturally, we act like we're really against any kind of judgment or certain kinds of justice. But the reality is we also have a huge appetite for justice in our culture, maybe more so than at any other point in my lifetime, where we look at things that are legitimately screwed up and wrong, and where maybe there isn't even one single person to point to or one single behavior to point to, but it's just like, no, that's just wrong. And it's been wrong for a long time. And it seems like certain people keep getting dealt the raw end of the deal here. And this over here is systemic, and that over there is hurting those people. And there's a whole lot of it to go around. And we look at it, and unfortunately, we're only able to see injustices de jour most of the time. Like whatever's the fashionable current thing in justice is the only one we notice. But we see injustices all around us, and all of us yearn for those things to get sorted out and made right. And so on the one hand, this little passage we're looking at here, this scene that we're hearing described, is really terrifying, and I think it's supposed to be. But on the other hand, it's also hope-giving, right? That all that stuff that is just, well, why does it even matter now? It's just water over the waterfall, like just whatever. Another million dead people here or there. What can you do? There's no reckoning for anything. There's no answers that come when horrible policies and horrible ideas and horrible injustices occur. And so maybe there is some degree of optimism and just sense of cosmic eternal rightness that comes with looking at a passage like this, as it occurs to us that, like, no, there's somebody who's qualified to dish out judgment and justice, even for those things you couldn't necessarily pin on one person, the faceless evil, the really ugly stuff, and also some of the evil and the really ugly stuff with a face. Justice is an odd concept to think about, because I do not want it for me, but man, I do want it for a few other situations, and we'll grapple with that a bit more next time around as we continue to think through this sheep and goat scene here at the end of Matthew chapter 25. I'm looking at the clock. I do not have time to cover it on the way out the door today, but I got some Patreon ideas that I'm going to share with you. I think we got some cool stuff coming down the pike there. I'll tell you about it maybe next time around. All right, I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour Podcast. Let's do this again soon.